My Indian name is Salitana, which means spirit and life. And my board name is Emily Manson. I was raised by my granny, who's also named Emily, so I went by Emmy. And I'm like a TV award, so you probably won't forget me because I'm pretty fantastic. And I kind of wear a lot of hats, but tonight I'm wearing the hat. I am an elected leader in my community for the Nanaimo First Nations. I'm proud to say I'm one of the women on our council. Yay! And I wanted to come and do a traditional welcome and to invite you to open your mind, open your heart to hear the speakers tonight. I think leadership is an important topic, not only for Indigenous people, but for Canada. And so one of the things that I'm really, really proud of is we have a mixture of speakers tonight, and I just really want to start us in a good way. And we'll start with a prayer, if everybody could stand. And I'm going to say it in English because of I'm still trying to embrace my language and learn my traditional tongue. So I just want to bring in our ancestors and bring your ancestors into this room, and that all the speakers are able to share from their heart, and that we hear a message, and that we in Canada know that we have reconciliation to do, not only as the Indigenous people, with each other, though. So I'm really, really grateful, and you guys can sit down. But I like bossing people around. That's pretty fun. So I also wear a hat as an Indigenous navigator here at Vancouver Island University. I believe education is a foundation to employment, but also being a part of change in the world. And so I get to work with students. Even though I look really young, I'm kind of old. So I am so excited to be here tonight, and I know that you guys are going to hear some wonderful speakers. But while you're here, I want you to really reflect on some of your own biases and some of your own things that get in the way sometimes of reconciliation. And so I know tonight is about how our ideas and choices can shape the future of culture and reconciliation, economic development, and more. And so I'm really, really hopeful that this is a spark for people, and say hi to everybody who's online. But on behalf of my community of the Nanaimo people and my chief and council, I welcome you here tonight, and I hope that you hear a good message. Awesome. Haichka.
I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the traditional territory of the Nanaimo people, and thank the Nanaimo people for all the support that they provide us at Vancouver Island University for engaging in learning, engaging in living together, and engaging in respecting and understanding each other. I want to thank Emmy for coming tonight and opening us in a good way. We open our minds and open our hearts and are listening to the dialogues tonight and really learn from each other. I'd also like to recognize Geraldine Manson. I believe Geraldine is where. Thank you, Geraldine. Geraldine's one of our elders here in the community, and it's great to see you here tonight. Thank you for coming along, Geraldine. Walrus Talks are hosted in cities across Canada with the goal of supporting thought-provoking conversations, and we'll see that tonight. We're excited to host this internationally recognized series of talks. I believe the 90th of these talks. It's important for VIU to host opportunities such as this in our communities. I believe it's the duty of post-secondary institutions to foster and create dialogue on important issues that are facing Canada, and the Walrus Talks do that. For the next 70 minutes, we'll hear a variety of perspectives on leadership from some extraordinary Canadians. Canadians who are out to change the world, one innovative idea at a time. As John Maynard Keynes said, ideas shape the course of history. And tonight's ideas center around leadership. Our speakers are leaders in reconciliation, mental health awareness, economic development, and globalization of our communities. They're advocates for our most vulnerable populations and those who struggle to access education. Two of them, Ruby Barkley, peer support navigator for VI's tuition waiver program, and Katarina Rout, translator and recently retired, long-serving member of our faculty, and now an honorary research associate with the university, are leaders from the VIU community who have worked very hard to make our institution a more diverse accepting, and accessible place. At VIU, leadership is about providing the right environment for people to live up to their highest potential. Through our tuition waiver program for former youth in care, 140 students have walked through our doors who might not otherwise have had the chance to go to university. Also, we're providing opportunities for Indigenous students through our learning partnership with the MasterCard Foundation, the Rideau Hall Foundation, and Yukon College. This new partnership aims to not only welcome more Indigenous students through the doors, but also ensure their success here and after graduation. VIU is also leading universities in Canada and the nation in promoting the Canada Learning Bond for children living in poverty. Children living in poverty and helping them have the kind of hope that is necessary for them to understand that they have a chance to come to post-secondary education as well. We believe educational institutions have a key role to play in building a path to reconciliation with Canada's Indigenous people. We strive to deliver educational opportunity support through access to education and provide the student support needed at the university and beyond. At VIU, leadership is all about celebrating excellence. And this year, VIU has a lot to celebrate. A couple of examples. History professor Dr. Cheryl Walrus was elected a fellow in the Royal Society of Canada for her groundbreaking work in Canadian healthcare history. Dr. Pam Shaw, director of VIU's Master of Community Planning, was awarded the 3M Fellowship this spring. This rare honor is given for exceptional teaching in a Canadian post-secondary educational institution. We are proud to be hosting this event that allows us not only to introduce you to some of our VIU leaders, but also to leaders from across Canada. Now, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce Sheila Ambrose, Executive Director and Publisher of The Walrus. Sheila. Shelley.
Hello, everyone. I am indeed Shelley Ambrose, and thank you very much, Dr. Nilsson, for that warm welcome. Thank you to Councillor Emmy Manson for welcoming us to beautiful Coast Salish territory. I, too, would like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded territory of the Nanaimo people, and thank them for allowing us to come together here today. Thank you to all of our hosts at Vancouver Island University and to the City of Nanaimo. I think Mayor McKay is here. Where is the mayor here? Hello, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for having us. It's lovely to meet you. We're very excited to bring the Walrus Talks here for the first time and grateful to all for the opportunity. I absolutely love this part of the world. I first came here in the mid-90s when I worked for a CBC radio program called Morningside with Peter Zosky. And we came here to do an event and to make a radio show. We interviewed a then 20-year-old Diana Krall, and we also interviewed her music teacher. And I remember her sister at the time was becoming an RCMP officer. And later, my two best friends moved with their families to Gabriola Island, and I get to go there a lot. I was there this weekend. Those friends are also here tonight, Jenny Marcus and Sheila Rogers, who also happens to be Chancellor of UVic, that other place down the island there. And my other friend, John McCormick, who's the Executive Director of the John Howard Society of Nanaimo. That is my local cred. Those are my friends. So I want to congratulate VIU on so many exciting projects, the MasterCard Foundation and Rideau Hall programs to create more opportunities for Indigenous students. I know Emmy Manson is an integral part of that new partnership. The tuition waiver program for former youth in care, and the new Health and Sciences Center, the Canadian Learning Bond Accelerator program, which we'll talk about later, and I think you even won the soccer last year. Is this true? Like, go Mariners. Well, and volleyball. Like, that's pretty awesome. So we're happy to be here in this region that has such a bright and interesting future. The Walrus is all about the future. This optimistic project started 15 years ago. In fact, this year is our 15th anniversary. And our goal is to create forums for conversations about Canada and its place in the world. We do that through events like the Walrus Talks, through the Walrus Magazine, and at thewalrus.ca, where you can see our journalism, our storytelling, and so much more. So hands up if you read the Walrus Magazine. That's good. Hands up if you read it in print. Hands up if you read it on the screen. Hands up if you do both. Fascinating. Okay. And we started traveling the country with the Walrus Talks 7 years ago. Tonight is our 90th Walrus Talks. And yes, thank you. It's been 90. We're 90. Has anyone here ever attended a Walrus Talks before or watched one on YouTube? So lots of newbies. So for our newbies, the Walrus has an educational mandate. We produce fact-based journalism. We didn't used to have to think we had to say that, but now we do. We have real live human fact checkers. There they are, real live human fact checkers. The Walrus believes in making a better Canada and a stronger democracy and a best ever informed citizenry. We're a charity, we're a not-for-profit. One of our board members is here this evening, Robin McClay, right there, also part of this institution. And we have a couple of advisory council members here as well. We also run a unique editorial fellowship program designed to ensure the future of journalism at the Walrus and elsewhere is bright. So when we sat down last year with VIU to talk about tonight, we were so impressed with what this institution represents. We're interested in who and what make people and communities stronger and growing leaders, making leadership roles accessible to all. And clearly VIU does that not just here in Nanaimo, but across the island and across the country. And it shows real leadership to be such an active part of so many different communities. And that's how we came to the focus of tonight. So we're glad that you're with us here tonight because it shows that you all have something in common, and that is the general idea that your mind functions moderately better. Your mind functions like a parachute. It functions moderately better when open. So here's how the Walrus Talks works. Each talker has 7 minutes each. They know this. They are disciplined. Each will come up and introduce themselves. We leave the lights up, so you have a program in your hand. The front of the program is in speaker order, so you can follow along. And if you'd like to know more about each of them, flip it over. Their bios are on the back. After you hear 7 of them in a row, we'll have a lot to talk about at the post-talks reception, to which you are all invited. So just before I let them get underway, I'd like to thank each in advance. So thank you to the president of the Nutchelnut Tribal Council, Judith Sayers. Judith has been a Walrus Talker twice before in her extraordinary life, once on water and once on energy. So tonight we've got her on a new topic. I'd also like to thank the president of the Vancouver Island Economic Alliance, George Hansen, the former premier of the Northwest Territories and former Dene Nation president, Stephen Kakfwi, I have to say this, whose daughter was a Walrus Talker when we were in Yellowknife. I'd like to thank translator and honorary research associate right here at VIU, Katarina Rout, and Guthrie Therapeutic Community alumnus and arborist, Scotty Taylor. I'd like to thank peer support navigator for the post-care tuition waiver program and a student here, Ruby Barclay, and mental health superhero from Toronto, Alicia Raymundo. Thank you all for coming. Let us begin.
Hello, Nanaimo. How's everyone? It's great to be here on the unceded territory of the Nanaimo people. As First Nations, my name is Judith Sayers. As First Nations people, we always had visionaries, people who could see into the future, tell us if it was going to be a bad winter, or whether or not there was going to be a good fish run, or if things were happening. As leaders, we need to have that kind of vision. We need to know what we can do for our people and where we're going to walk. Knowing where you're going to walk, and if you're walking on the right path, comes to you along the way. I remember I used to do a lot of work in the early years of the Universal Declaration of Indigenous Rights, And the first time I ever went to the United Nations in Geneva, I knew that building. I knew those hallways. I knew the podium that I spoke at. I had been there. And it told me that I was on the right path and doing the right thing. Being a leader means being able to use a team of people. You can't do everything alone. And your team of people, you have to allow them to live to their full potential. Use their skills, because together you can achieve great things. You have to have the respect and power base of the people who put you where you are. If you don't have that, you're nothing. You know, sometimes being a leader means you have to be upfront, you have to be bold, and oftentimes you're alone. I don't know if you remember this, but way back when Gordon Campbell got elected, he did a referendum on treaties. And as First Nations people, we didn't want that. So I was one of the leaders in speaking out against that. And one of the things I did is I asked everybody to send me their treaty referendum ballots. And on the grand finale, we built a canoe out of cardboard. We filled it with treaty referendum ballots. And the grand finale was I was supposed to shoot a flaming arrow into this canoe. So we all walked down the hill from the Longhouse at Songhees. And I went to find the chiefs, and nobody was with me. I was alone with all these people. There was cameras everywhere, people everywhere, but no one was with me, and I couldn't see any chiefs. And I thought, oh, I'm alone. And then I thought, no, I'm not alone. The ancestors are with me. Sometimes you want somebody there physically, but lots of times you have to be the leader. When the government deleted the tree farm license 44 and made them into private lands in our territory, Hupachesset territory, I spoke out against it. We went to court. Did anybody stand with us? No. And so we did the fight, we did our thing, and later the government started deleting TFLs from other private lands, and other people were impacted. How I wish people had stood with us at that point. Maybe we could have prevented this from happening. But sometimes leadership means being out there, being outspoken. And you know you have to be true to yourself, your values, and what you believe in. You don't want to be able to be bought by the Kinder Morgans or the Site Cs of the world, if that's what you believe, and that's what I believe. I was asked to be on the Provincial Climate Change Advisory Council, and I was honored, and I was pleased, because climate change means everything to me. Then this government chose to go a Site C, and they chose to continue to promote LNG. And it killed my spirit to know that I was on a panel, a group for this government. It took me 3 months. I didn't want to make a decision, but I stepped off of it. We're no longer on that panel because I can't believe in people that would do something like that. And that's not where my heart is. And that's what you have to do as a leader. You have to do what you want to do. You have to live up to what you promised and what you said, or you lose the credibility of the people that put you in that place. I'm a single mother. My kids, I raised them. And how many hours and days and weeks have I been away from my children? I'd go away, and I consider it a battle, come home from the wars. And I'd hug them, and I'd remember what I was doing and why I was doing. They grounded me, because the work that I do is for them, for their children, for the grandchildren. You use what you've got of the most circumstances that you've got. And maybe being a nurturer as a mother, maybe it helped me nurture my First Nation. Maybe, I don't know, but you do what you have to do the work that you want to do. What drives you? Because what drives me is my family, is the land, the water. And that's what you focus on. and that's what you do. Always be willing as a leader to share your knowledge. Never be afraid that your student is going to surpass you, because one day you're going to be gone. What good does your knowledge do then? It's so exciting to see that. I used to work for a chief. His name was Ed Burnstick. And that's what he did. He took me, brought me to Geneva. He brought me to New York. He taught me. And I respect him more than any other leader. The former Lieutenant Governor, Iona Campaniello, was the same way. She tutored me. She was my mentor. She invited me to Government House to meet the President of Ireland, to sit with the Governor General of Canada. It was wonderful to be guided and helped, and that's what I try and do with other people, is to share my knowledge. Sometimes you just have to rise above and do what you need to do. As a leader, you don't need to put people down to make yourself better, to try and rise above them. You do negative things, you attract negative things. You do positive things, you get positive. There are so many doors, so much opportunity to be a leader, and I'm privileged to have taken advantage of some of those opportunities. To be a leader, you have to think like a leader. And I look forward to seeing the leadership of each and every one of you in this room as we go forward to build our homes, our country. Clayco, Clayco.
Good evening. My name is George Hansen. When I was invited to speak about leadership in business and economy, I needed to define these terms so that I could be confident that I would know what I was talking about. This was a challenge. As a young man, I was sure that I knew everything. But at this stage of life, I've determined that the only thing I know for sure is that I don't know anything for sure. And I'm not entirely sure I know that for sure. The economy is a system for exchange of goods and services, and business is the practice of making one's living by engaging in commerce. That was easy. Now, what is leadership? And what does leadership look like in the practice of exchanging goods and services? The verb to lead comes from Old English, meaning to guide. And the Latin word duc means to lead. It's the origin of duke and duchess, aristocratic leaders, as well as duct, as in aqueduct, which leads water, and abduct, to lead away, product, conduct, deduct, and even educate. Thus, a business and economic leader guides the exchange of goods and services, and such a leader produces, introduces, conducts, and educates. My father was born 106 years ago to New England dairy farmers. Their lifestyle, common at the time, was without running water, electricity, telephone, central heating, or automobiles. We talk of the disruptive economy, meaning Amazon and Uber and artificial intelligence, etc. But how disruptive were the technologies that replaced kerosene and candles, that replaced horses and oxen, replaced craftsmen with machines? What we call the economy has been one gigantic disruption after another since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, which, in full bloom by the early 1800s, was the progeny of the late 18th century Enlightenment, the central tenets of which were liberty, equality, and property. The middle class, which previously did not exist, emerged when the American Revolution, followed by the British and the French, threw off the yoke of aristocratic rule and thrust open the door for the pursuit of happiness. 200 years later, we find ourselves still in a relentless global race to join the ranks of the middle class. Those able to take advantage of these new freedoms emulated their aristocratic predecessors by gathering wealth to themselves through industry at the expense of the less fortunate. This disparity imposed the same divide between middle and working classes as had existed previously between aristocracy and peasantry. It also spawned communism, against which the free world has battled ever since. And this divide was further perpetuated in the colonization of Western Canada. And how disruptive was European incursion into the business and economy of Indigenous people? So, what has my father's 106th birthday got to do with anything? It is a measure of the shortness of time. The seismic shift in the world economy happened only 2 of my fathers ago. And our island economy is a child of this revolution. For 100 years, roughly 1850 to 1950, coal, the energy that drove the Industrial Revolution, was king on Vancouver Island. And coincidentally, 106 years ago, the Vancouver Island coal strike started and ended when the BC government sent 1,000 militia to Nanaimo. To this day, Nanaimo is a divided community. Management in one camp, labor in the other. North Nanaimo versus South Nanaimo. Liberal and conservative versus NDP. Given all of this, what can now define a business or economic leader? In a word, balance. In my opinion, our scales are tipped far too far towards individual rights at the expense of the well-being and sustainability of our broad community. And what does business and economic leadership look like? It looks like the governor of the Bank of England warning companies with big carbon footprints to come clean about their exposure to global warming risks. It looks like Ralph Nielsen of Vancouver Island University leading the way for foster children to receive post-secondary education. It looks like Nanaimo business icon Tom Harris, who died suddenly this summer, lending his passion and influence to community causes throughout his career. It looks like Tim Mitten at Big O Tires, whose commitment to fair exchange of value inspires customer loyalty. It looks like any and all efforts to build collaboration with open acknowledgement that together we are better. Walrus Talks expresses an objective in relationship to the 150th anniversary of Canada. We desire a better country. We live in one of the cleanest, safest, most prosperous places in the world. How could it be better? it can be better with more leaders who recognize that healthy community is foundational to economic prosperity, and that we simply cannot abide historic divisions perpetrated into the future. I challenge the people of Nanaimo, and I challenge the people of Vancouver Island, right and left, north and south, management and labor, young and old, Indigenous or not, to drop tired attitudes inherited from revolution and from both sides of the colonial experience, so that we can forge a new future, a better community, a better country. Enlightenment philosophers differed in their assessments of human nature. Some saw human beings as fundamentally vile creatures who required strong controls. Some saw humans as fundamentally pure, who could live in harmony if given freedom. History has since shown us that we are neither completely vile nor pure. The challenge of leadership is to grapple with the perpetual paradox. The brass ring for which we reach is the fine balance between the rights of the individual and the good of the whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Sinama kennenek arawe kogamasidi tene ate. Publicly, some of you may know of my work that I did from various leadership positions in the Northwest Territories, including as the president of the Dene Nation, as cabinet minister, then premier. To recognize our people, I once stopped and helped stop a major pipeline. I was there to support the settlement of 3 regional land right agreements in our homeland. In the early 80s, to fight for our right to hunt and trap, I set up an international coalition of Indigenous people, Alaska, Greenland, and all of northern Canada. And to support the economy, I negotiated with the diamond industry to get jobs, contracts, access to diamonds right in our own homeland. I also, as Minister of Education, asked that there be mandatory curriculum so that the students of the North studied the history and culture of Indigenous people years ago, made it mandatory. And when the Inuit asked for support to divide the Northwest Territories to create a new territory out of their own homeland, myself and many other leaders supported the vote on division and helped to negotiate a boundary that led to a successful and very, very mutually beneficial agreement on where that boundary would be. These are the things I have been involved in, but that's not what I came to talk about. I came to talk about leadership and my perspective on it. The most important part of my name, Gafi, comes from my grandfather. As a child, he saw in me what I could not see for myself, the leader that I was to become. And he coaxed leadership out of me through my life. And he was one of the first of many cherished elders that I've been close to. But you often hear us speak of elders. And what do we mean by that? Who are they and where are they? At first, all I knew was the words they uttered and gave to me. I could not appreciate or understand them very well, but they stayed with me, and they slowly came to life, clear, strong, enduring gifts. And those words have carried and sustained me through my life in my various roles as a leader, and even in the times when I felt that I was truly alone. I was born on the land. For the first 5 years of my life, that's where I was. And then when I was 9 years old, I was sent to residential school. And there I learned and was taught about the devil, with terrifying pictures and people who look like me burning in hell. I was repeatedly beaten by a nun who told me I looked just like the devil. I was bad and I was dark. And this seared deep into me. And so for many years, especially as a young child, I often wondered if I, in fact, was evil. And so I carried this fear, this shame and rage into my life. And as a young, traumatized Dene, after I came home, I set out to confront what I saw as the enemies: the church, the government, the old companies. Now it was my turn to see them as evil, demons out to hurt me, out to hurt my people. And when I engaged them, and when I went out to meet and confront them, I referred that as dancing with the devil. So at the age of 18, I returned home from residential school. I was lost and angry. I turned to drinking, fighting, and once an older cousin scolded me and took me hunting. And he said, "Respect the hunters and the trappers and people who know the land. They know more than you ever will and what you learn at school." They took me out on the land time and time again, reconnect me to my roots and my culture. And as a young leader, I once stood at a large assembly, spoke eloquently, I thought, in English, and everybody applauded. And when I waited for my aunt to interpret for me, she spoke over the loudspeaker and said, "You spoke so well in English, now you speak for yourself in your own language." And there was a long silence, and I started to speak. And I've relearned my language the hard way, you might say. Another elder told me, "I'm going to make you a drum when we find your voice. Then we will make the right drum for you." And it made me wonder if I had a voice worth hearing, with something meaningful to say, words that could resonate. By the time I was 36, a husband and a young father fighting alcoholism, one of the Dene elders told me, "Try to connect to your heart and learn how to love." His words were my medicine, and my children and my wife taught me how to love. My grandfather was with me at that time too, years after he had already passed on, but was still a living presence in my dreams. He came to me and challenged me to stop drinking, to choose life. And so I did. A few years later, when I was out smoking a cigarette, I had to make that clarification. My young children started crying and said, "Daddy, don't smoke, we don't want you to die." And I remembered the words of my grandfather. And so I also quit smoking following that. Then there was a very defiant community grandmother who once told me, "Nobody can touch us. We are of the fire carrier people. We are the ones who carry the fire." Her words were the beginning of a new image of myself, no longer the devil's child. So I learned to believe in myself, to believe in what I have, that there is always a light. There's always a light to take forward, to pierce the darkness, to create hope, to show the way, to lead. Our chiefs and our elders always said, "Be respectful, to one another and to everyone else. Work together, and that way you can work with others and listen to our words. One particular chief was a role model for me. In our meetings, he would sit for days and listen, from morning till late at night. And after 2 or 3 days, he'd finally stand up, and we all knew it was time. And he would say, "I've been listening to you, every one of you, and now we have to make a decision. We have to come together and put our words and our thoughts and our hearts together so we can make a decision and set a direction for ourselves." And that served me all the years that I've been working as a leader. In spite of the difficulties I had with the church and the suffering that they've caused, I knew the elders and the leaders were devout Christians. The values that the Christian faiths have are compatible with the ones we had. And so when there was an opportunity, I worked very hard to bring Pope John Paul in 1984 to Fort Simpson in the Northwest Territories. And when fog prevailed and he could not land, we persevered. In 1987, we got him to come and actually make the visit so our elders who were there could see him and connect with the head of the church that a lot of our people belong to. It was a gift. And when Pope John Paul came, he gave us the words, regret for the way that the church had treated some of us, and that he recognized that we are a unique people with a right to determine our own future as nations on our own homelands. When I was 13, my grandfather gave me a prophecy. He said, "You will make my name known all across this country." And I thought, my grandfather is getting vain. I did not know at that time what he was saying. He said, "Be respectful and focus on what is in front of you and what needs to be done, and pay no attention to what comes wandering by or what tries to distract you." Then he and my grandmother said, "We will always be with you." Years later, in my 50s, I realized I was carrying his words deep inside me. Even when I was locked up in a dark room and sexually abused in residential school, I realized that I had never really been alone, that he was with me, and that helped me survive and move beyond those severe traumas, to survive when so many others did not. I believe that the elders are our true leaders, the wise ones who choose to set light, hope, and good, and to see it in everything that is created, all that is around us. I had been stuck, seeing the devil as a terrifying force, but in the worldview of our elders, he was such a minor character that they gave him a mere mortal description. He is the one who must have burnt his foot when God put him in hell. And so that is name in Dene, a kid's burnt foot. For in spite of all the suffering that our people went through, and the elders, they always believed the Creator has always been beautiful and all that he created. And there is no all-powerful devil. In their world, beauty and good prevails. And this is a common Indigenous worldview. A healer from a Cree nation, years ago when I was with my terminally ill brother, who had a year to live, told us, it's hard to ask the Creator to give you more time when you are not using the time he already gives you very well. He said, I cannot give you more time, but I can teach you how to use what you have better than you are now, so that you truly appreciate and use what the Creator gives you every second, every minute. So you are truly ready. You know how to live, then you're ready to die and go to the spirit world. I realized that I was never so much leading as being guided by the wisest of our people all my life. And I want to believe that this has helped me to grow perhaps into a role of an elder someday, soon I hope, with a gradual give of compromise, of compassion. I realized that in the course of my early battle so many years ago, I had a tendency to demonize too many of those I had to engage with. I realize now that many of them, like me, were just good people, misguided and lost. And with that realization, slowly, my own demons have disappeared as my image of others have softened. It is my own personal kind of reconciliation, and it has grown out of the lesson of kindness and compassion given to me by the elders. And I say, as I did to my wife, sometimes you have to get to know the darkness before you can truly love the light. Like all the elders now, I try to focus on the good in people. I know that things will not change without continuing effort, continuing leadership on all sides and at all levels. But the elders have said, we believe there is hope, that there is emerging rays of light in a history we have all shared where there has been far too much darkness, and that one day, all this that oppresses and denies my people will disappear, and that all of us that seek to harm and burn, to burn and hurt each other, will be made powerless. Recently, the Prime Minister committed to implement the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, and for me, that is one certain opportunity that we all have to try to seize and make the best of. For me, there is an image of collective reconciliation started, and it starts within, deep inside each one of us. For we have to arrive at a time when we are treated as human beings in our own homeland, equal as nations on our own homelands, recognized for who we are, where we are, and treated truly as equals, for we are the first people of this country and a founding nation of this country. To get there will require true leadership from all of us. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Katarina Raut, and I'm here to talk about becoming citizens of the world. The world has never been as interconnected as now. Today, more than 1 billion people are on the move, more than ever before, and this number may double within the next 40 years due to climate change, according to Thomas Nail, author of The Century of the Migrant. He predicts that the 21st century will be the century of the migrant. Disturbingly, the number of people forced from their homes is also higher than ever before, 65.5 million. No protection exists for the human rights of people who are internally displaced, of refugees without legal status in a nation state, and especially of stateless refugees. Because we share the limited space of this globe, every one of these migrants, as Immanuel Kant argued in 1795, has a right to become a fellow citizen or fellow inhabitant for at least a certain amount of time. To create a state of world peace, Kant argued, we need laws establishing world citizenship and conditions of universal hospitality. World citizenship requires a cosmopolitan awareness, not just a globalized economy. This needs to inform our treatment of refugees. With nearly 1 million immigrants scheduled to arrive in Canada in the next 3 years, We cannot leave it to politicians and experts to show this hospitality. Insufficient integration of newcomers potentially creates alienation among the immigrants and fear in the already established populations. The backlash we experience and witness in the United States and much of Europe threatens their democracies. But we can take charge. We can develop the leadership skills and attitudes that can further integration. By welcoming newcomers fleeing war and persecution, we can all contribute in a small but significant way to world peace. Small actions of non-experts can have far-reaching consequences. Here's my story as an example. After 9/11, I started to read Arabic fiction in translation to learn more about the Middle East. A few years later, I had a chance to teach a course on modern Arabic fiction in translation with the support of a colleague from Jordan. The class included students from Arab countries who provided cultural information for their Canadian peers, and in turn encountered some readings that were banned in their home countries. The second time I taught the course, many community members joined the class. We shared knowledge, was how a Saudi student described the course. It was an experiment. I was no expert. Everyone took risks. There were tense moments. But we learned about each other, and we left behind any notion of a uniform Arab world or a uniform West. Literature made us aware of the stories of individuals, of the heterogeneity of their cultures, of the value of difference, and of the commonalities we share. In order to share knowledge, it is vital to involve people with the expertise of lived experience. We all learned much when a newcomer to Nanaimo talked about his experience as a Syrian refugee. We had invited him as a guest speaker when we read Hassan Kalafani's novella Men in the Sun about the plight of Palestinian refugees. Newcomers bring their stories with them. If we learn to listen, both sides benefit. Unexpected consequences followed my foray into reading Arabic fiction and translation. An opportunity to introduce our local experiment at a national conference on international education, an invitation to talk about Middle Eastern literature to a sponsorship group preparing for their family, a request from a publisher to suggest material for an anthology used in university courses. As the Arab Spring gave way to violence and the numbers of refugees grew, I developed a course on refugee writing. Again, there were no models to work with, no standard curriculum, little research. Several of the students were community members, sponsoring refugees or developing such a commitment. This course too had unforeseen effects. A PhD candidate in Belgium asked for my reading list to use in his dissertation. An Eritrean writer, Abu Bakr Khal, emailed us from his new home in Denmark to tell us how much it meant to him to be read in a Canadian university. Pebbles thrown into the water can have short-term and long-term effects, and we can all throw pebbles. As a literary translator, I'm aware that since World War II, English has been the most translated language worldwide, but is not much translated into. This imbalance supports the international expansion of Anglo-American culture and reinforces the drift toward American hegemony. Crucially, we can and need to learn more about other cultures and people. We can be leaders in supporting newcomers. Here's how. Watch a movie or read a book in translation about a country that you know little about. Take such books to your book club. If you're a teacher, add international material to your curriculum. Open your classroom to newcomers to Canada to share their stories and expertise. If you're a university student, join your local World University Service of Canada, WUSC group. WUSC brings bright students from refugee camps to Canadian universities and has a great track record of success. Form or join a private sponsorship group, or even just support such a group and their newcomers and offer English conversation or childcare, or simply talk to a newcomer and listen to his or her story. As Justin Trudeau said at the airport when he welcomed Syrian refugee families, we can do this together. Every one of us can become a leader in our communities. We must stop thinking about the refugee crisis as a crisis they have created and we have to cope with, and instead understand that this is a crisis in humanity, as the late sociologist Zygmunt Bauman called it. There is no exit, he said, from that crisis other than the solidarity of humans. By learning about each other and showing hospitality, we strengthen our communities, prepare for a more viable social and economic future for ourselves and our neighbors. We contribute to world peace. That is leadership. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Scotty Taylor. A little overwhelmed up here. I had to write a few things down. So I want to start by saying welcome to everyone, and this is my story. So I grew up in Langley, British Columbia. That's over on the mainland. I was born into a pretty dysfunctional family dynamic. My father was physically and psychologically abusive towards my mother, so she left when I was young, and my dad raised me. He raised me amongst a different set of morals, values, and beliefs. Looking back, it doesn't surprise me that I gravitated towards more of a negative lifestyle. The drug dealers, the criminals, the gangsters. By my teens, I was partying quite a bit, experimenting with drugs, and working towards more criminal behavior. By my early 20s, in the span of about 14 years, I spent just over 10 of those years inside prison. On my last case I was doing time for, I finally said this is enough. I didn't like who I was, I didn't like where I was going, and I didn't like what I represented. It was time for me to make some changes. I expressed these feelings to the drug and alcohol counselor, and she told me about this Guthrie Therapeutic Community. I've always been a very driven person, and this was my chance, so I embraced this opportunity. With her support and the support of my CMT, that's my case management team, I was transferred there in early 2016. Now, unfortunately, this is the only one in Canada. But fortunately for me, this one was right here in BC. So when I arrived, I jumped into this program with both feet and I gave it 100%, 110% the whole time. I was determined to leave the old lifestyle, the self-defeating behaviors, and the criminal thinking behind me. Now, to describe the TC, that's what we call the Therapeutic Community, to you, is it's set up almost like a simulator for life in a lot of ways. They bring as much normalcy into the equation as possible in accordance to still being in a jail setting. This place gave me the opportunity to learn not just about how to cope outside of prison, but through therapeutic techniques and lots of programming, I learned not just how to control my addictions, but how to control and adjust my behavior to be a productive member in society. I could also compare the TC to almost like a corporation setting where there's a leadership board that gives us the opportunity through hard work and trust to work our way up to coordinator positions and house leader positions. And so forth. I myself was facilitating classes and mentoring other residents within weeks of arrival. Within a couple of months, I worked my way up to a house leader position where I was able to watch and help the entire community and its functions. From there, I was granted parole. I was then able to put my teachings to the test. This started with the very basic needs to function in society, doing my taxes for the first time ever. opening a bank account, getting proper identification. That was mine. As soon as I felt grounded enough, I'm not joking. As soon as I felt grounded enough, I started going back into prison to talk to the guys that were going through the same challenges that I went through. This way, this brings hope to these individuals and inspires for them to be successful as I was being successful in my life. I also am a part of an aftercare program that we're starting here to help individuals make the transition to be productive members and to feel a part of our communities. I've been out now for about 18 months, and in that time, I've been working full-time for a property maintenance company where I found a great passion for tree work. So this past 6 months, I've been training to be an arborist, and the best part about it so far is that my business partner and myself is starting our first property maintenance business right here in Nanaimo. I would also like to say how important it is to help these individuals that go through these trials and tribulations that don't have all the opportunities that most of us do have out there, especially with the opiate epidemic that's going on out there right now. I think it's important that we're all aware of that's going on. And I'd also like to say that good leaders don't make good followers. I believe good leaders make more good leaders. And if we take the time to help, inspire and support individuals, they will be able to reach and find their true potential and purpose and when that happens, dreams become reality. So thank you for listening to my speech.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ruby Barclay, and I work here at Vancouver Island University as the peer support navigator for our post-care tuition waiver program. I also am a student, so that takes up a lot of my time. I'd also like to begin by acknowledging that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Nanaimo people, and I'd like to thank them for allowing us to live, love, learn, and come together to engage in such discussions today. I'm honored to be here. I was a little bit nervous, but it's a good thing. And I'm honored to be here to share a story to you of leadership. I think there's a lot of books out there, there's a lot of things on Google, there's a lot of things out in the universe about leadership, but I think some of the best ways that we learn about leadership is through the stories that people tell. But before I share, I would like to invite you all to take a moment to think about and recognize the first time that you thought you were someone who possessed qualities of leadership. When was your potential revealed to you? When I ask about leadership, I'm often told about people behind movements, institutions, political action, scientific innovations, and people who tend to lead other people. I never thought that there would be a time or foresaw a future where the word leadership and my name would be associated together. A future where I would be standing here, a little bit shaky and nervous, sharing the stage with other inspirational leaders to tell you about this. A future where I would be using my experience as an instrument to foster avenues for more leaders to emerge. I'm often asked how someone like myself can overcome adversities and rise into roles of leadership. Maybe someone should write a book on this, I'm not quite sure. But I don't think that there's one way or one answer, and I think that's been demonstrated before. I thought a lot about what would be valuable to share with you this evening, what would be beneficial to talk about. So I could tell you all the things that I've done as a leader, but then again, I could just email you my resume and we wouldn't have to be here. So instead, I thought I would share about a story of my relationship with the idea of leadership. Being a great leader is about doing great things in this world. And so tonight, I decided to share about my experience with leadership. When I was trying to convey the words that I wanted to share this experience, I ended up Googling the word leadership. and it came up with 15 synonyms, all of which share in their relationship to the word leadership, but each differing in the meaning of how leadership could be used. I began my journey with leadership believing that I had to rise on my own, be brave on my own, thrive on my own, and make something of myself. At the age of 6 or 7, leadership was initially a hard word for me to sound out. At this age, leadership meant voicelessness. At age 10, the word leadership was a concept I had yet to explore. At this age, the word leadership meant power, none of which I felt was in my grasp. At the age 13, the word leadership was written inside of a box of an assignment package where I had to then write someone's name on who's influenced my life. At this age, leadership meant control. At the age 15, the word leadership emerged through a change in my environment. At this age, the word leadership meant survival. At the age of 17, the word leadership was told to me in a closing group of a program I took, and at this age, the word leadership meant foresight. At the age 18, the word leadership was written in an application package for a university I was applying to. At this age, the word leadership meant direction. At the age 19, the word leadership was again written in a file that I was signing and closing. It was written under a list of strengths and also under a list of my weaknesses. At this age, the word leadership meant choice, and I had to decide how I was going to leverage my potential. At the age of 20, the word leadership was a learning outcome of a course I had taken here at university, the first time I had truly looked at the idea and concept of leadership. At this age, the word leadership meant to let go. At the age of 21, the word leadership was something I challenged. At this age, the word leadership meant initiative. At the age 22, the word leadership became integrated into my way of moving in this world. At this age, leadership to me meant to navigate. Yesterday, literally yesterday, the word leadership was used to describe myself and a colleague by a group of youth who we end up spending a lot of our time with. Yesterday, the word leadership meant mentor. Today, the word leadership is the topic of our discussion tonight. Today, the word leadership means tomorrow. I'm a student. I'm also a peer support navigator. I'm also a leader. It's not an easy transition into any of those roles. I'm also a sister. I'm also a daughter. I'm also a friend. All of these hats are in some way, shape, or form leadership to me. Leadership means tomorrow because this is how we should practice leadership, sustainably. My potential as a leader, my ability to move forward, was not revealed to me until I was immersed in community. Because of mentorship, I was able to realize my potential. Because of leadership and mentors in my community, I was able to recognize my purpose and recognize the future for others. Leadership means tomorrow because that is who we are creating a world for. Leadership means tomorrow because that's why we create programs and that's why we create initiatives in this world, because of the tomorrows that are going to come. Do you remember when I asked you to remember when you realized your potential? When did you realize someone else's? As a leader, it's your responsibility to be a mentor, to put trust, time, and effort into creating tomorrows for others. And yes, it takes a lot of tries, it takes a lot of tears. Many of my mentors have been fearful about dehydration at times. Leadership means being there so that others can be there with you. This model works because in this model, everybody learns. A leader isn't someone who has a list of great things that they do. Leadership means tomorrow because at one time, that's how long I had to wait to realize that leadership was not about rising on my own. It was about rising alongside other leaders. And so I'll leave you with this idea. What a world it would be for our children, for the children like myself, to understand leadership without words like powerlessness, voicelessness, or survival, but instead where we will see a world where leadership will continue to emerge as a concept of internal fortitude and social investment, where we won't ask people about their adversities, but ask people about their successes, where the word leadership will have a synonym like mentor, and where being a great leader is not just about doing great things, but about being great people in the lives of our future tomorrows and our future leaders. Thank you.
My name is Alicia Raymundo, and I am a mental health superhero. Now, some of you might be wondering where you get that cool nickname or why, but that's what I'm hoping to explain to you during my chat with you today. To start, I just wanted to explain why mental health is so important to me. I could tell you things like the statistics around the fact that more people die from suicide than terrorism and murder combined. That in Canada, 2 out of 3 people who need mental health services will never get them. But for me, it's personal. I spent 9 years of my life suffering in silence because I didn't know the words depression or anxiety, and I didn't understand suicide. When I finally found my voice and asked for help, I reached out to someone who I thought I could trust, and she told me I was crazy. It was at that point that even though I had a wonderful community, amazing family, and was going to a pretty good school, that I felt like a burden on all of those people in all of those places. And I felt like maybe the world would be better off if I wasn't here. So I tried to take my own life. The reason why I'm standing in front of you today is because when I ended up in the hospital, I found a leader who saved my life. Now, this isn't a love story to psychiatrists, nurses, or even the admin or janitorial staff. It's actually to a 60-year-old woman with auburn hair and a bit of a limp, who after staring at me in the same hospital waiting room that I'm sure exists in every hospital, playing the same Seinfeld reruns, walked over to me, grabbed my hand, and said, "From one crazy person to another, you'll need this," and placed a simple, cold, silver something into my hand. And as she walked away, I plucked my fingers from my palm, and I saw a necklace that said the word hope. Now, for many of you, you might understand the point I'm making, but for those of you who don't, when you live with a struggle, you have a hard time seeing tomorrow. You have a hard time sometimes seeing the next hour. I had not thought about hope since I was 3 years old and really wanted cookies. So this concept of hope saved my life. I hoped to watch my sister graduate from high school, and when that day came, I hoped to make a world where no person has to wait 9 years to get the mental health services they need. From that time, I have found my voice. It has not been an easy journey. I've lost 14 friends and family members to suicide, and I found myself on the pathway of 200 people who told me that my story helped them turn away from suicide and ask for help. It's also taking me to really crazy places like speaking at World Youth Day or being in a photo shoot with Cher for Vanity Fair for some reason. And it created this really interesting path where I found myself as a leader and a public speaker, even though I never loved those words. And when I was a public speaker in my first years of university, my public speaking teacher told me that I should just give up because I would never be a public speaker, and you're lucky that you're not as wrong as her, I guess. But people always ask me what's my advice for being a leader, especially when you're leading from a place of expertise, of lived experience. And I have 3 things to say to those people. The first is that if you experience injustice, if you experience a system that's broken, that doesn't work for you, to not blame yourself, but realize by seeing that you are the right person to fix it. And you right now, not in 3 degrees, not with 10 more years of work experience. You are right now enough to create that change. The next thing is to surround yourself with people who believe in you, with people who build you up and support you and understand whatever movement or cause or thing you are trying to build or do, that they're always there for you. And sometimes these people will have to push you back on the right path when you fall off, but they will always build you back up if they ever need to tear you down. The last thing that I will say is that for every emerging leader or leader in this room is to take care of yourself. We have so many valid reasons to be angry. We have so many valid reasons to never stop working. But if we do that, we will burn ourselves out and we will sacrifice ourselves for the cause. And while a lot of people do that, it means that we can't create all of the change that we want. So be angry, be sad, cry, but also have laughter, have joy. Don't be mad at yourself for taking a break. One of my favorite things I love to do when I close out these talks is to invite everyone to do exercise with me. So if you would all join me in closing your eyes. And I want you to think about the worst experience you've had in your life so far. I want you to think about the person that you needed during those times. I'll invite you to open your eyes. And I think if everyone in this room is a leader that they needed when they were younger, the world will be just fine. Thank you very much.
I think Ruby should write that book. Don't you think Ruby should write that book? Who else is going to write that book? I'd like you to join me in thanking all at once all of our talkers, Judith Sayers, George Hansen, Stephen Kakfui, Massey Cho, Katarina Rout, Scotty Taylor. Anybody need an arborist? Need an arborist, anyone? Scotty, right there. Ruby Barclay and Alicia Raymundo. Thank you all. As I mentioned earlier, this is our 90th Walrus Talks. That means there are now more than 607 Walrus Talkers and 607 7-minute Walrus Talks videos you can watch wherever and whenever and wherever you are on our YouTube channel. You can just head to thewalrus.ca. At thewalrus.ca, you can also subscribe to The Walrus, but why would you do that when you can just go out to the lobby and visit Blair? Blair, who's another Walry, and yes, we know that's not a word, but we call ourselves Walry. Blair out there for you tonight. For just $20, you can get the Walrus delivered right to your door. David Leonard, our director of events, will practically bring it to your door himself. So you get 10 copies of the Walrus for $20. And while you're out there, please sign up for our newsletter so you don't miss any other Walrus Talks. We're in Vancouver tomorrow. We'll be back to BC soon. You can join us anywhere in Canada in person or on the live stream. That would be great. And come to Toronto for June 14 and 15 for our new festival called The Walrus Live. And lots of neat things are going to happen there. So I also would like to say thank you to our national partners Inspire, Shaw, and Shirk. And I want to thank Dr. Ralph Nilsson, Jason Coates, and the entire team from Vancouver Island University for making tonight possible. I know that you know in this community that VIU does extraordinary, innovative things, and you're likely sitting here thinking, how can I take everything I learned tonight and at VIU, and what can I actually do? What is the thing I can do to, as Ruby said, realize someone else's potential? I learned about a program here today called the Canada Learning Bond Accelerator program. VIU is the only post-secondary institution in the country doing this. They're trying to raise $50,000. I know you'll help. And this is where you come in. They're going to put $500 in RESP accounts for 100 children. As you know, the feds will match 40% of the amount families put into RESPs. In this case, VIU will in effect be the family for kids in need between the ages of newborn and 13 years of age to kickstart their RESP and ensure that post-secondary education is something that's in the plan from birth, that it's about leadership, because we know you have to grow leaders in your own community and you can do it together. So you can contribute directly to this pilot program called, once again, the Canada Learning Bond Accelerator program. Your $500 becomes $700 instantly, and you'll have changed at least 2 lives forever, the child's and your own. So think about that. Plant a $500 seed, grow a future leader. That would be great. You can do it together. I also would like to thank Councillor Emmy Manson for the warm welcome tonight, and to Jen, Justice, Robin McClay, William, Janina, Rolanda, and everybody here for helping us. I have one more thing to say to the audience, but before I do that, I would like our talkers and our VIU folks to stand up. You can clap on their way out. They're going to go to the reception first, so you don't do that weird thing where you trap them in the front row and they never get to have a drink or go to the bathroom. So off you go. Off you go. So our talkers will be at the reception that we hope you will join us at. There is food, there is drink. If you are there, there will be good conversation. There's also our friends at Adventure Canada have a table out there. Visit them. Write your name down on a ballot. You can win a trip for 2, a $27,000 trip for 2, circumnavigating Newfoundland. So absolutely visit that Adventure Canada table. And I'd like to thank you all for coming, and I'd like you to remember one thing: you are actually the walrus. Thank you.